Joining me now from Tel Aviv, the former Prime Minister and current Defense Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You have long argued that we need more pressure on Iran. President Obama announced recently that he believes that there is sufficient oil in the world, the supplies of oil are sufficient to pursue an even more stringent set of sanctions. These will be the tightest, harshest sanctions that have ever been put in place, I think, against any country. Do you think that this will be enough to put the kind of pressure on Iran that you have wanted?
No one can predict, Farid. It's clear that the depth of the sanctions is different from what we had in the past, and it has its impact, both the closing of the SWIFT clearing system, as well as the sanctions on oil export, and of course the coming negotiations that probably will encourage them to move. But to tell you the truth, we hope for the better, but I don't believe that this amount of sanctions and pressure will bring the Iranian leadership to the conclusion that they have to stop their nuclear military program.
And if the Iranians were to make some proposal or agree to some proposal, would you be satisfied, would the Israeli government be satisfied if they were to accept some version of a very intrusive international inspections regime, or to accept that the enriched uranium be made in Russia? Are these kind of compromises ones that you could accept as a solution to this problem?
Farid, we see the Iranian nuclear military program as a challenge to the whole world, not just to Israel. We are convinced that to deal with it once it's nuclear will be much more complicated, much more dangerous, much more costly in terms of both human life as well as financial resources. But at the same time, we are not against any kind of effective and urgent sanctions, not even against negotiation. But we told our American friends as well as the Europeans that we would have expected the threshold for successful negotiation to be clear, namely that the P5+1 will demand clearly that no more enrichment to 20%. All the already enriched 20% material out of the country to a neighboring trusted country. But if the P5+1 will settle for much lower threshold, like just stop enriching 20%, it means that basically the Iranians, at a very cheap cost, bought their way into continuing their military program, slightly slower, but without sanctions. That will be a total change of direction for the worse.
And if that were to happen, if the Iranians were to, if you were to end up with what you regard as a suboptimal or less than perfect solution, you have argued that Israel has a closing window of opportunity to act because at a certain point the Iranian sights get hardened. Do you believe it would then be necessary? Is there time pressure on you? Do you believe that you have only a certain amount of time before which military strikes would not be effective against Iran?
You know, by definition, we have a limited time. Every quarter it becomes shorter by a quarter. But I expressed already my view that we don't have to make a decision next week, and we cannot wait years. So it's not a matter of weeks, it's not a matter, but it's not a matter of years on the other hand, before Israel will be practically kind of deprived from the possibility to contemplate what could be done. But that's not the real issue. I really see it as a major challenge for the whole world. I really see it as a critical time for the rest of the world as well. And I really think that the tightest possible sanctions and steps against Iran should be ratcheted in a way that will effectively corner them.
But Mr. Minister, you said you don't have to decide this in a week, but you don't have much more than a year. So in effect, you're saying that there is a fairly clear timeline here, that around sometime in the next 9 to 12 months, something has to get negotiated that stops Iranian enrichment. Otherwise, Israel will feel compelled to act.
I didn't, you know, you go much beyond what I've said. We don't have any decision about what to do or a date for decision. But it's clear that for us it's critical. I strongly believe it's not critical for us. I believe that it's critical for you as well. I read into your articles, find that you, Farid and me, have differences about it, but I think that you are wrong and I'm right about it. That no mutually assured destruction kind of situation will serve as a modifier or stabilizer in this case, because we are now continents and Israel is not either the United States or the Soviet Union. And that's basically sanctions are the only option by now. And the fact that Khamenei says that he doesn't want to get a nuclear weapon, it's just a kind of a tricky kind of rhetoric. A Manu report could not leave doubt in the mind of any serious person that the Iranians are determined to reach nuclear military capability in spite of the determination of the rest of the world to block them. And looking into the past, drawing from the examples of both Pakistan and North Korea, we can realize that it can happen. So we feel it urgent. Of course, we look at it slightly different from other nations, but we think that it's important to deal with it extremely seriously and to not to remove any option from the table except for containment. Those who believe in containment see a ray of hope. I don't believe in containment, so I don't see how easily it's going to be solved. I'll be happy to be wrong.
Mr. Minister, there's a new book out in the United States called The Crisis of Zionism by Peter Beinart. In it, he proposes that the West Bank and Gaza should be described not as the West Bank and Gaza, not Judea and Samaria, but as undemocratic Israel. The argument being that you have millions of Palestinians there who have no vote and no state. Is that a fair characterization of the West Bank as undemocratic Israel?
I didn't read the book, so I cannot make a kind of a statement about it. But it's clear that the deeper reason to have this solution of two states for two people is in order to make sure that Israel, we will delineate a borderline within which we will have a solid Jewish majority for generations to come, and beyond which we will have a viable Palestinian state with a Palestinian majority that will express their identity, their dreams and their aspirations. And I think that it's possible. It's not simple. It's possible. It needs goodwill from both sides and readiness to take a tough decision. In a certain way, it's true that if Israel remains the only political entity western of the Jordan River, the fact that there are blocks of millions of Palestinians that have their national aspiration and they cannot vote to the Knesset makes a problem. And if they can vote to the Knesset, it will make Israel a binational state. But that's exactly, it's clear to all of us Israelis, including right-wing Israelis, and that's what brought most of us, including at the right wing, to understand that the only solution is two-state solution, and that's what Netanyahu said more than once. The only issue we care about is that during the execution and the processing of the details of these two-state solution, the security considerations of Israel and its national interest will be taken into account, because however complicated, the Palestinian state will be a part of community of 20-odd states of Arab nature, and Israel will remain the only Jewish state in the region, and probably the only member of the UN which is explicitly threatened to be destroyed by other members of the UN. That's a situation that needs to be taken care of by us. we realize we are living in a tough neighborhood, no mercy for the weak and no second opportunity for those who cannot defend themselves. We want to be strong, ready to protect ourselves under whatever kind of threat, but at the same time stretching out our hand to make peace with any neighbor who is ready for it.
Ehud Barak, pleasure to have you on, sir.
Thank you.